but it's a platformer, so you have to go hard
Yeah, totally.
to stand out. You got to do it.
Well, tell people a little bit about Semblance and why you're talking about changing the platforms. What do you do in Semblance?
Yeah, so you exist in this world where the property of hardness doesn't exist. Everything is soft, squishy, and bouncy, and you're literally a piece of the ground that's been brought to life because this infection of hard crystalline materials began to seep into the world and infect the little cute critters. So you're sort of jumping around as this adorable blob and collecting these essences that bring the world back to softness. So here you can start to see the deforming terrain really early on, just like something's in the way and you can deform it. If you touch the green spiky stuff, you die.
Those are the hard crystals that you were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. This is just kind of the tutorial where the player's getting their only two abilities in the game, which also happen to be their eyes, which is quite adorable.
Aww.
And yeah, we also have this, because we're making a puzzle game, we wanted to make a narrative that the player has to piece together as well. So spread throughout the game, you'll see sort of cave paintings that sort of vaguely allude to the plot in the game. And players can engage with that if they want to, but they also don't really have to.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You mentioned linguistically. I'm curious what semblance refers to linguistically here.
Yeah, it's a pretty terrible name. Our Google alerts are very useful. A lot of sports writers use the word semblance, apparently. I know a lot about American sports thanks to our Google alerts for this game. A lot of basketball players like the semblance of defense.
Sport.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, semblance refers to kind of where the game is situated in the genre. You think you have a semblance of understanding of how platformers work. You just run and jump. But this game kind of changes what you think about how platforms work. And also refers to the way the story is as well. Like you think you understand what's happening in the story, but there's kind of not what's actually happening. And actually all the puzzles in the game are accessible from the beginning of the game. Like you can kind of see here, there's sort of this little puzzle there, but it's just a conceptual gate. If you understand how to get past that, you can access pretty much every puzzle in the game. Because we kind of didn't like puzzle games where if you get stuck, that's it, basically, the game's over, because you never figure it out. I think a lot of players get stuck like that.
That's me on my Twitch stream. Whenever I play a game with a puzzle and I get stuck, I'm like, I have to go to the bathroom now, and then I'm on my phone, looking for a tutorial. But with this one, if you don't understand the puzzle, you can just skip it and come back to it later.
Exactly.
I like that.
And here we're starting to see some more interesting examples of what the deforming terrain can do. Like if stuff's anchored to the terrain, what happens? You'll see it starts to bend. You have lasers, and you try to jump over them.
Ooh, just made it. That was a scary jump.
I think you'll probably die.
Oh no!
And then you realize you have to sort of put a platform between the two lasers to land on.
Oh.
So this game kind of has these solution ranges to puzzles, where it's not just one single solution. You have a bunch of tiny little varying solutions. So we find that it's kind of like players collaborating with the designers on level design, because they're deciding how hard or how easy they want certain solutions to be, basically.
So this little guy, he's called Squish.
Squish, yeah.
That is so cute. And he was originally part of this world.
Yes, he was a piece of the ground that's been brought to life. In this world, there's kind of these three sort of overlord trees that sort of affect and influence the environment. And this kind of starts to get into the plot, but basically, bad stuff happened and they needed someone that wasn't a tree to help out.
I love that. It's got a deceptively interesting plot. You look at this and you think, oh, you just bounce around and move some platforms, but there's actually a really interesting story involved in this. And I really like that.
Yeah.
So the circles up in the upper left hand are representing completed puzzles, right?
Yes, exactly. So those are all the collectibles in a level that you need to collect, and you'll see when you come out, the collectibles sort of disinfect the level tree. So that gives you a bit of feedback about how you're progressing through the game, because you're trying to, disinfect the world from this hard crystalline material.
So I could potentially do an entire level without even achieving any of the puzzles?
Yep, exactly. Isn't that perfect? Doesn't sound great.
Okay, interesting. And then as I kind of disinfect the trees, I'm making progress toward solving this mystery.
Exactly,
cool.
Yeah.
And healing the planet.
Exactly. Oh my God, it's an eco-friendly game. And this is kind of our riff on the idea of a wall jump in the game. You don't really wall jump, you make ladders.
That was so cool.
And then it also goes both ways, so you also dent out on the side, and now you have this little thing to climb.
Shoot, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I would have figured that out. That's so cool.
You would have done it, it's okay. I believe in you.
That's really awesome.
How much time do you think a player is going to spend with this game? Is it kind of a contained experience, or is it something you might go back to for a long time? What do you think?
So the core gameplay experience is about 3 or 4 hours to play it through the whole game. But we're quite excited to see people starting to speedrun the game, because like we mentioned, there's a lot of varying solutions. to solving puzzles. So we really think there's a lot of room for optimizing how quickly you can get through stuff. And we've had some speedrunners literally come to us in shows and hog a station and just sit there for like an hour and like break the game and show us glitches. And it was like this weirdly positive experience where they were just showing us broken parts of the game. And we're like, oh, that's really cool. That'll be a good glitch in the speedrun or something. And it was really cool. So the core experience is 3 to 4 hours, but I think it's really interesting to replay the game and see how much faster you can get through stuff.
And this game has multiple worlds, is that right?
It does, yeah. There's 3 worlds in the game. This is the first world, the beautiful pink and purple world, and then there's a second lovely green swampy world, and there's a very snowy mountainy world. And each of those worlds has a unique art style, color palette and setting, and also has an interesting mechanic. So the first world is all about the deforming terrain. The second world introduces these beams that stop the player from resetting puzzles and also like make sort of like trampoline things. It's really fun. And the third world, you actually start to realize you start to see the harder of the infection of the crystalline material. So there's all these really hard platforms. And obviously if you're a soft character and you dash into a hard platform, you're going to change shape. So then the characters start to change shape as well, and you're doing all these puzzles with both the character changing shape and the world changing shape. It's great, super fun.
That's so metaphorical.
It is.
If you're too soft and you throw yourself into something too hard, I'm getting feels already.
I know, it's a very deep game for something this abstract.
Yeah, and you mentioned a lot about this color palette and the art style and everything. Can you tell us a little bit about the art and how it was developed?
So originally this was a university project, and the guy making it was the co-founder and programmer was trying to make games that were set in like Rothko paintings, and he wanted to make this character sort of change shape and like change the paintings as well. So the art style was very abstract, and then we kind of we were 2 programmers making this game, so we did a lot of really juicy program art. Like the character and all the platforms are rendered with code. They're animated and rendered with maths, basically, and they still look pretty fun. So when we actually had an artist on the project, there was a lot of stuff that was so complicated that we couldn't really go for a more complicated art style. So we just lent into a very minimalist, abstract aesthetic. And then in terms of colors, we really wanted to make stuff that stood out. So we literally went and looked at Steam and like thought what color palette might stand out here, and the one we basically settled on was pink and purple because there's not a lot of games that have that color palette. So it really pops when you look at it in a sea of screenshots.
It's very twitchy as well.
It is, yeah. That's why we're here. Yeah.
Of course.
And you said this started out as a student project.
Yeah.
Do you know about how big the team is that ended up finishing this game?
Yeah, so it was about 5 people full-time and a couple people part-time over the course of like 18 months. And the whole team is based in South Africa, and one Zimbabwean and 1 Kenyan. So it's a very pan-African development team, which is quite cool.
Yeah, you don't really hear of many South African game developers, and that's fantastic to get some diversity in the scene here. I think you've definitely come up with something unique. And I wanted to mention too, the music has a very African flair to it.
Yeah, it does. And I think that was kind of important for us. Like, it's kind of hard to make necessarily African or South African themed works and sell them to the West. So you have to kind of be clever about the way you make cultural references. So we make something that's very accessible, like pretty much everywhere. But things like the trees are inspired by African foliage and plants, and also Samurai Jack, people have told us.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And the music as well just has a lot of drums and music from Africa. It's kind of just inspired, and it's very subtle, but just those little cultural references help you see yourself in the game, even when it's not necessarily this like very heavily themed game set in your country. So
Now tell us, because we started out by saying, this is the first platformer you're ever going to play. We've talked a lot about kind of the emotional aspect of this, the cultural aspect of the game.
Yeah.
What do you hope that players will notice and take away from this game after playing it, whether that be kind of the emotional experience or even from the standpoint of someone who loves games?
Yeah, wow, that's a big question. I think, I love. So I think about postmodernism a lot in art. Like I really love a lot of we're in a very postmodern age where we're remaking comic book movies and stuff like that. And I really want to see more postmodern games in a way. Like this game is really referencing the genre of platforming itself. Like we literally take puzzles and gameplay from other platformers and say, how would this work if the platforms could change, right? So I'd love to see more like self-referential games happening. So that is just the major mechanical thing. I think narratively, or emotionally, we just want to have this like very soothing, calming aesthetic, and it's like a shortish game, and we want to just make a place that's calming and soothing for someone, and it's really nice to see people play the game and sort of be relaxed, even though they're like kind of struggling sometimes with solving the puzzle. It's like, it's cool. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, where can people go to find out more? When can they get their hands on the